Well, hello there, fellow Padawans.
Hey, we posted a picture of this saber on YouTube and in a few different Facebook groups. We got a lot of questions on it, mostly about this emitter, so we wanted to answer some of those here today.
First off, a little disclaimer. We're new at this, so please have a little bit of patience and grace with us. We'd really appreciate it. And if you see anything that seems off or needs to be corrected, we would love a shout out.
Yeah, because we're like you said, we're still super new, so we're not trying to say we understand everything about this, but we had some questions, so we figured we'd explain what we did here. First off, this saber is built on the VHC platform. We got most of the parts from Virus Sabers, and then we got a couple of these new items, which we're calling them Corvus bands. We've seen a few other people call them that. I believe it's Corvus Saber Armory is where we got those. We'll have links for Vire and Corvus down below. Neither are sponsors or anything like that. We paid for this saber, but both of these companies have been great to work with. So if you're new to it or if you don't know who either of these people are, look them up. They're amazing.
Yes, very helpful, very nice. Definitely recommend.
Yeah, they've been a godsend on building our custom sabers. So, like we said, most of the questions have been about the emitter. If you don't know, this section here is the emitter. This section would be the switch section. This would be your body section and the pommel section. Most sabers are going to be laid out in this way from what we've seen. Obviously, there are outliers and things like that, Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker have your switch down here, but this is kind of your basic layout.
We used a Mara Jade handle, and they don't make a Mara Jade emitter, so we used a box switch to kind of make our own.
Yeah, so the emitter here is used of two of these Corvus bands, two of these Avatar bands, and then the inner part of the Mantis emitter. The Mantis emitter is here, where I got this piece from. It came out of here. It would just come out of here and just normally be the emitter. All this stuff threads together, so I took this out, used this piece with this switch section for this saber, and had this just laying around. So really this was kind of just, collecting dust and got used on this.
Always nice to find spare pieces you can use.
Right. So we got these two bands here, which here's an example of another one. Again, the stuff all threads together, so where it goes doesn't matter. It's male, female, etc. down to the end, which is female. So here's a band, and you can see it's super polished. We'll go into that here in a little bit, but two of these was used, two of these Corvus bands, and then the inner part of the Mantis. Now when it was all new, it was shiny like this, and we used this stuff, which we found off recommendations on some Facebook pages about weathering lightsabers, aluminum black. This stuff is amazing. So you can see here, these are the same pieces. These are the same pieces. And these look weathered. I mean, they're still silver, but they have a different finish now. They are weathered.
Beat up.
Yeah. So sand this down and apply this. There's videos out there. Watch them. Wear gloves. Don't touch this stuff when it's touching metal.
It is a fun little experiment, though.
Yeah, you can hear it. It bubbles. It gets hot. So anytime you got a chemical touching something that gets hot, it's corrosive and it's not fun to touch. So I'm not Walter White, but don't touch it. So the other part of the emitter here, we have a control box, and I have this one. Everything on this is pretty much JB welded or Loctited or something, so none of this is moving. But this control box is the actual method of the control box. And you can see it's designed to be the box that controls your switch. I have this plunger button, I believe is what they're called, which touches the physical button. You can hear it. So that's the click of the button. And there's a inner little screw here, which on this one we have extended just up, although you can probably, the slight sheen there, see the shadow of that button pushing up on it to keep this clip, or the card, in place.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that is snug because you will be losing those if you go out playing with them.
Yeah, if it's more than a shelf queen, you're going to lose some clamp cards, so buy extras. If you're actually using it, Tyler at Sabers recommends a little bit of hot glue. So do we. That works pretty well. Once you get your plunger button pressure in there, you can see the hot glue hits. There's a little wall there, and it's pushing on. It works. It works very well, but they're cheap. Pick up extras. You're gonna lose them if you spin. So that's kind of the emitter. The whole thing has been sanded and aluminum blacked. If I can figure out how to put a picture of this earlier in the process before this was done, it'll be here. If not, you just saw me point at nothing, so there's that. But yeah, so another thing I wanted to show, since all this is male, female, when you get down, if you're using these Corvus bands, because they're sandwiched between two pieces, they act as a timing shim, which is another big piece. We had to time this to get all this to work right. A timing shim is a little piece of metal here, a little thin piece of metal to add space. Now, this Corvus band acts as a timing shim. It doesn't thread on. As you can see, I can just spin this, right? Both ways, infinitely.
Not going anywhere.
Okay, so something we discovered that we recommend if you're going to use these Corvus bands as at the end, where your pommel's at, take a little O-ring, again, down at your hardware store, a few cents. There's one in here, slipped in, you might be able to see it there. But so I got this guy shoved in there, and so that way you can see it wiggles just a little bit. Oh, pop, there it goes. So, got that rubber ring in there. You just slide that in. Well, it popped out, so now we're just not going to get it on camera, are we? Either way, I'll put it in. There it goes. No, I'll deal with it later. I'll put that back in later. But, so, as long as you're not trying to remove it, you saw, that'll keep your Corvus band in place if you ever want to remove your pommel. When it came to this, if you were to buy a couple of these avatar bands and go to put a control box on, the holes do not line up. It took a good amount of timing shims in here, which are going to add space, and then they affect the rotation. So there's one here actually, because these holes in this didn't line up, and I wanted those to line up, so there's a timing shim and this band here which affect how things sit. So anyways, there's a few of these timing shims in here, don't know how many, but we'll say 17 is the magic number.
That's a good number, however many you need to make it work.
Right, and so one of these Corvus bands, and that lined up to where the two holes that were here lined up with these two holes here. Now, the control box is designed for M3, which is a smaller metric threading than the M4 that's in most of this. And so we had to get a drill bit out and drill the two holes here a little bit larger. So if you do this, you might be able to line your timing shims up to where, because this right here and this right here are M3, but the way we ended up getting it lined out, the M4 holes lined up. So we had to open up the box a little bit.
And we wanted to use both screws to make sure it was really secured.
Yeah, because either way, you could always put one on here, but there was a slight wobble to it, and we weren't happy with that. So that's how we built that. You know, the rest of it's pretty simple. Some weathering. These screws, we took them all out, painted them black. You know, this has just been happened as we've been playing with it over the last week. This is just copper wire. You know, so you got copper wire here. You can get that at your hardware store. And take a piece of that, fold it in half, you know, put a screwdriver or something around it, and then put the other two pieces into a drill. Spin the drill, and then you get that, and then we use the aluminum black. It does work on copper, or at least this cheap copper. And it turned it black, sandpaper it off, and put it into those electrical connectors. Just a couple of these, again, hardware store stuff, you know, a few cents. Pin those into place. Put the copper wire in. That one's just a copper wire into one of the holes. Tension's what's holding that around. Underneath there, hit the light, that's always fun. Underneath there you can see it's just the little loop that I used to make the dang thing. You know, I probably could shimmy that around into another spot if I really wanted to, but that's how we did that.
And this coil part over here is actually my favorite part of it.
Yeah, it adds a big effect. You get a lot of around lines in lightsabers. You don't get a lot of down lines. Down lines make a big difference in our opinion.
Shakes things up a bit.
And then this D-ring, drilled a hole into the bottom of this pommel. As you can see, it's not even perfectly square, but if it was hanging on a belt, you wouldn't see it. Some hardware, hold that D-ring on. That D-ring matches the copper pretty well to bring it in. And there we go. That is the Nota Jade lightsaber.
And remember, fellow Padawans, we all got into lightsabers because we wanted to escape to a galaxy far, far away. So may the Force be with you, always.